Welcome back, folks, to another Soul Politics episode. I'm so excited for you to be tuning in today and diving into some very interesting topics with us. And speaking of, we have a guest this week. Our beautiful Miss Lauren had some personal things come up. So we are sending her so much love and certainly missing her, but so excited to have Miss Caroline Hull, who is a spiritual coach and intuitive reader on the show this month.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to sit and chat with you, and I've listened to the podcast, so just really excited to be here.
Yes, absolutely. So before we dive in, Caroline, I'd love for you to just like share a little bit about yourself with our listeners so they know a little bit about how awesome you are.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Yeah, so I'm Caroline. I have been on this amazing transformative journey over the past few years, which has led me from doing actually work in podcasting, which is so funny, to work in the spiritual realm and fell in love with coaching, fell in love with reading tarot and oracle cards. And that's what I do now. So I'm also a mom. I homeschool three beautiful girls and live in Colorado. So yeah, doing all the things.
She is a superwoman incarnate for anyone who's probably thinking the same. Forever like a true Aries mom. You're just like doing it all.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that because for the longest time, never really connected to the fact that I'm an Aries. And lately, I am seeing it so much. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's why I'm a fire sign. So
Yes.
it definitely makes a lot of sense. I'm very busy.
Yes, you are definitely a fire sign and you handle it with ease for the most part. I would be a wreck. I don't know how you do it all, but every time I meet a mother who's like, several kids, homeschooling, like doing all the things, your business, like all this stuff and is happy and you know what I mean? Like it's an Aries or a Capricorn, but usually an Aries. So
That's so funny.
you
Well,
ladies are super women for sure.
for me, it's all about doing the things that fill my cup, as it were. And all the work that I do really does. And I think that's really important. Sometimes I have to step back and go, okay, do we need to modify or, reorganize a little bit? But yeah, I love it all.
Yeah. Well, and folks, Caroline has her own podcast and you could definitely connect with her work. So make sure to stay tuned. She'll be sharing all of that towards the end of today's episode. And you're definitely going to want to connect with her, connect with the things that she's doing, because she's also, one of the reasons I wanted to have Caroline on the show and felt she would be such a good guest in lieu of Lauren was simply that she also talks about politics, doesn't shy away from
Yeah.
politics. And because I know her actually in real life, I understand that, and follow her work. Our views are very similar. And we're both very sort of inquisitive people on this spiritual path in the midst of these changing times. So I'm excited to have you on with us today, Caroline. Glad you could make it work amongst all the many things that you're doing.
This is a perfect day. No, this is perfect. Good timing.
Yes, yes. So if you are just tuning in to Soul Politics, this is a show where we explore the spiritual architecture behind the world's biggest headlines, utilizing the Akashic Records, psychic mediumship, astrology, tarot, whatever modalities we want to bring into this to help you understand the deeper spiritual purpose behind these challenging times. This isn't your typical political commentary, it's a higher perspective on this collective awakening that's happening across the US and certainly worldwide. And, some of the biggest goals of this series are really to help you look at things from a different perspective, to connect with your own intuition, your own sort of discernment. And, we provide things from a really unique perspective. And so, take what resonates, leave what doesn't. But ultimately, we want you to really trust what feels right and aligned for you, regardless of what it is that we bring forward in this episode. As all of us are different, we're all navigating, these times in a bit of different ways. And what's most important is that we really trust and connect with that divine connection within each one of us. So, again, thank you so much for being here. Today, we're going to be diving into the Uranus and Gemini transit, taking a look at the war in Iran, and then wrapping things up with the US economy. So, three big topics, which I'm really excited to dive into. Actually, I was sharing with Caroline before we started that the Akashic Records channeled like for basically it was like 40 minutes on these topics. It's just so much. And so, really
Yeah.
going to try to minimize everything. And that's like not even taking account what came forward for Caroline. So,
We may be here a while.
yeah, grab something wonderful to drink. I've got some yummy tea and get cozy, you know? So, yeah, let's just dive right into it. The Uranus and Gemini transit, one of the reasons that I felt it was really important to dive into this particular transit is because it is going to outright transform our world. This is not
Mm.
just within the United States. This is a massive, massive transit. It's going to last until about 2033, I think, before it actually shifts into Cancer. And it's just going to be huge. You know, you think about these sort of more collective transits, just literally dive into the structures of our collective. And of course, this show is primarily focused on things from, you know, the perspective of the United States, simply because this is where we live. But this is going to be worldwide. So, Caroline, I would love for you to kind of kick things off with what came up. What came up in the tarot
Yeah.
for this transit?
It was really funny. I mean, I always chuckle at what I pull because I feel like it's always just so on point in a way that I can't even explain. And the very first card I pulled was the Fool,
Of
which is
course.
hilarious. Right, hilarious. Next to that, I pulled the High Priestess. So I was looking at these two cards. And what came forward for me was a lot around how we communicate, how we interact with each other in the world. There was a lot of discussion. So I just to clarify, when I am reading cards, I am waiting for messages to come through about the cards. The meaning of the card is important as well, but as is the imagery and what I'm being told or what is being shared with me. So there was a lot of like we're gonna make a lot of bad choices. It was like there's more bad choices coming. I think that a lot of times when we go into these kind of times where we're in like a transit or a certain time period, we think that it's going to happen at the beginning. And I was really seeing a lot of like it's going to stretch over the entire time. Um, a lot of it's going to get worse before it gets better. And another thing that really came forward for me was the recent lawsuits that have been going on with the technology companies and who is responsible for what we are exposed to. Uh, that just was coming through a lot. And I got that we really need to start trusting ourselves when it comes to how we use all the things, communication, technology. It was like all related. Um, and was reminded that we know in our bodies and our spirit what feels right, yet we are constantly choosing the wrong thing. So for me, that means like a lot of like I was thinking like how we even communicate with people. I sat down yesterday to write thank you notes for the first time in forever, and it just felt so novel. Like, oh my gosh, I'm writing notes. Like to me, that was what it was really saying was like we're going to be returning to a way of communicating and interacting with technology that we haven't done in a while. On top of those, I do want to say that I did pull the Six of Pentacles, which was really showing me that the scales are going to be more balanced, but it's not going to happen right away. So yeah, initial impressions there was definitely like we as a collective have to start choosing when to put things down, which I
Yeah.
thought was very fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's like you definitely touched on a really important part of this, which is kind of why I gave the year in regards to how long this is actually going to last. Like
Right.
this is a long transit. And so typically when a collective planet like Uranus switches signs, we're going to see a lot of the shadow elements of it to start
Yes.
with. And because, of course, the change that takes place, it must come through awareness, right? So we've got to see
Mm.
what is actually going on. Typically, as well, like you mentioned, like a lot of decisions, a lot of actions are just kind of made in that space. And then it's like, oh, through this transit, we're going to have to redo it, rewrite it, right?
Right.
Correct it, basically, if we so choose as a collective.
Yeah.
Um, the one of the first things that I thought it was really interesting, the Akasha said was like, by the end of this transit, people are going to have so much more respect for astrology. So that's going to be
Interesting.
interesting because it's like through this, when you think about, and the Akasha even like dove into this, they talked about how when you think about Uranus, and I'll just share this, what they said, understand that Uranus is a planet that enacts great change very quick, very rapid overnight, even at times. Therefore, understand that as Uranus is leaving Taurus, an earthly sign, where it was more difficult to enact that quick change, why it's going to be outright delighted to move into the energy of Gemini, where it can much more freely express its ability to enact change and to do so in a quick and rapid way. For Gemini is an air sign. It likes to move. It is very intellectual and knows so many different things. And therefore, the combination of these two is going to be quite deliberate in its undoing of so many things that were deeply ingrained in society
Mm.
that must go and must be removed. Right. And of course, they're talking about technology, politics, how we move in our everyday, of course, communications. Um, and the Akasha really dove into AI, which I'll kind of wait on to kind of discuss here in a
Yeah.
minute. But you think about these two huge components, right? It's like Uranus, and as a studying astrologer, the way that I always kind of think of it, Uranus is like this lightning bolt.
Right.
Actually, the astrologer who kind of like came up with the description for Uranus did so in the midst of waiting for this huge Uranian transit to hit his chart. And when it did, his house actually like was struck by lightning and lit on fire, and he ran out of the house.
Oh my
And he was
gosh.
like so excited, like feeling like he understood Uranus. Mind you, his house was like burning down. And that is truly what Uranian energy is. It is very quick, very rapid. And being in Taurus, which is so focused on the earthly, like it's been unhappy, right? Because it hasn't been able to be
Right.
itself. But hooking up with Gemini, whoo, Gemini is an air sign. It also is very quick. It also is very intellectual. It also likes fast change, fast everything. And so, like, it's going to really, these two paired up together are really going to set things on fire very quickly. And on the front end, it's going to be rough, I think, really, really rough, because it's kind of like uh, maybe like two teenagers, like, being set loose together. And like we know Gemini is literally ruled like considered to be like the trickster of the zodiac. And it's going to be like hanging out with Uranus, which what this is going to be massive for us.
Yeah, yes, exactly. I mean, that's a lot of that vibe of like, this is going to be so huge and so impactful to who we are as humans kept coming through for me as well. And I like what you said that people were going to start appreciating astrology more because I kept feeling this sense of like we were going to return to things that we weren't paying enough attention to, was kind of what I was getting. It was so funny because while you were talking, I totally pulled the Justice card. So, which I think totally tracks with, again, there's balances and a scale and swords. I think all of that is what this time period is gonna be.
Yes, absolutely. And for folks who like really want to dive into this transit, the astrology podcast did like a 3-4 hour deep dive on this specific transit in 2022, the fall of 2022. You can go Google that, look it up. With Chris Brennan, it's fantastic. You do not need to be an astrologer to really like enjoy it, because him and a guest, they sit down and look at all the times Uranus has moved into Gemini over our recorded history, and it is fascinating. I remember like getting ready for work, listening to this and just being like, oh my gosh, like here this comes. Okay.
Right.
And this was 2022. And it was like, okay, we've got a couple of years, so that's good. But like, it's here now.
Yeah, we're due for a little bit of a shaking up, I think. So it
A
makes sense that
massive
we would,
shaking up.
yeah, it makes sense that we would be entering this time now.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that it really, like, they really dove into, because I want to talk about how it's going to affect politics here in a minute. But first, they really brought up AI, which makes
Yeah.
complete sense. When Uranus did kind of play around in Gemini a bit in 2025 last year, AI technology kind of exploded. And that is
Mhm.
absolutely going to be what it is. Um, and I actually did an amazing Akashic reading about AI back in April 2023. It's episode 126. So I highly recommend going and checking that out, because if you are freaked out about I think it's really going to give you a nice understanding of what AI is like stepping in to do. And it's honestly, it's exciting, but first, again, we got to navigate that initial shift and that change. So one of the things the Akasha shared, they said your understanding of AI is not only going to change, but it's going to exponentiate during this time. It's going to come on board for you in your everyday life. In fact, it will become a part of your daily
Mm,
life. It will be as synonymous as breathing to you by the end of this transit. Um, and then, they talked about first how kind of like the major shadow aspect of this is going to be the management of it, right? And people who
right.
have control over it right now, like they're utilizing it for their benefit. There really isn't much oversight. And so that is going to have to take place. But, they shared like, for understand that what AI ultimately is doing is that it's upending societal roles and jobs that are no longer aligned for humans. It will be taking mundane things off your plate. It will be making life easier for you to adjust, work less, focusing more on the care and upkeep of this planet, which has been
Mm,
sorely needed for a very long time. Understand it will not take your creativity. In fact, it will boost your creativity. But this, of course, is going to be a process, right? Um, and I thought it was interesting because, of course, they spoke about how, like, here in the U.S., right, like we've been a nation of working, right? Like
right.
I grew up with entrepreneurial parents, and like work was life, and I'm still at 44 trying to pull these apart because it's so ingrained in
Yeah.
me. You know what I mean? And AI is really going to assist us in shifting back into life and really back into the care of this planet. And one of the things that I saw in the midst of like channeling this part of it was seeing us going back to things like having gardens,
Mm,
and you know what I mean, like just really caring for our planet in a much more
exactly.
supportive way, because like we have to, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that so much. It definitely resonates with, this concept that kept coming through for me about how we needed to return. It was like not necessarily returning to like I don't want to say like simpler way of life. I don't think that's the right verbiage, but it was like return to things we've set aside.
Yeah.
And like when you said gardening, I immediately like got, chills because I think, there are some of us who those are some things that we are returning to, writing. You mentioned that it wasn't going to take creativity away. I think that's a huge fear that people have with AI. It was interesting. AI did come up for me as well. And what I kept being reminded is that we know what feels right in the usage of it in our body and our spirit. When we use it, we know what feels right and what feels wrong. And I think we're really being asked to lean into that more.
Yeah.
And I think, accountability with the people who are like you said, managing it, running it right now, I think that's going to be a huge piece of this as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I went to a very like I joined like a mastermind meeting a couple weeks back with very high earners, and they had someone who's a part of this master. It's a nationwide mastermind community come in and present, and basically what his company does is they create these like AI avatars for you
Mm,
to really kind of like grow your online presence so that you don't actually have to be there. And it was so fascinating hearing him break down how they train these AIs on the back end and how they put these models together. And, and they were showing us these accounts that they've been working with that are just like crazy blowing up, you
mm.
know? And of course, he was like, Anna, you'd be perfect for this because, like, you're sharing information and these types of things. And I'm just like, what? I mean, like, obviously, my business owner head, is like, that would be great because I really struggle getting in front of, video and whatnot. It's
Yeah,
harder for me than I think people realize. But all I could think was, gosh, if one person was like, is that AI? You know what I mean? Like that would
right,
I could never if I dislike it that much, then I just don't need to be doing it. Like there's no
right.
way that I don't freaking care how much sales and whatnot you can bring in for me. Like uh, ethically, there's just no way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I struggle with this as well because in my previous iteration of my business, like AI literally made me obsolete. Uh, because there are programs. I mean, I use it now to actually help with editing my clients, the few editing clients that I have. But there are programs now that will edit a podcast for you and do everything you need to do. And so everybody took that in-house. So I was very anti-AI when it first started because I felt like personally attacked by it.
Hmm.
And then as a business owner, I was like, wait, how can I use this to help me? And then it almost became a crutch, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that it's a struggle. I think it's something we're all going to have to discern for ourselves. I absolutely agree with you, though. Like, I think being in this world and being public facing about it, it's not something that I want to be using as much. And so I do like now I tend to shy more away from it, but I'm really curious. Like now I'm actually kind of feeling a little bit more open-minded about where it's going to take us during this time because I'm like, as you were talking about, I was like, I am not getting any bad feelings, no bad vibes. Like
Mm-mm.
it doesn't feel like something wrong.
Mm-mm.
Um, I think it's just an evolution of who we are and how we interact with it for sure.
Yeah, it's really going to take, and even when I channeled that message back in 2023, it was exciting because, AI was still, it wasn't being spoken about that much then, because this was like the early part of 2023. But even then, like they really talked about how AI is going to make your life so much better. And
Right.
and it's going to help you be even more creative. And it's just going to take, again, the mundane things off your plate so that you can actually live life. Because I mean, you're a mom of three, right? And just the other day, I saw this video of this like a Chinese robot in this house, and it's doing the dishes and it's making the breakfast and it's putting
Please.
the clothes in the washer. And like, wouldn't
I'm
you
ready.
love that?
Yes, bring it. I would love to try that prototype. I volunteer as tribute. That would be
I'm still
amazing.
waiting for like the Jetsons, like a bathroom thing, like
Oh, I
where they like on
know.
their conveyor belt and hit the button and their hair's done and they're clean. And like, that's what I want.
Yeah, no, that is so real. Like I think about, I think about the things that take me away from the things that I want to do. And, one of the things that I am not really good at is planning. I homeschool. I use AI to help me lesson plan, you know, and that has been such a lifesaver as my
Yeah.
kids have gotten older and it's been harder. So I really do see the benefits, but
Yeah.
good golly, if it could do the dishes, that would be great.
I would, my partner love to do dishes. So I guess I can't take that away from him, but there are other things like vacuuming. Please come vacuum.
Oh my gosh, nobody in my house likes dishes, so that's a real problem.
So the last thing that I just wanted to share regarding the AI, that was really important, they said, um, and as you begin to befriend this technology, be sure to place AI in its lane while you stay in yours without combining the two. For
Yes.
although this could be part of what comes through this transit, it will be very important for you to stay outside of it. And what they were specifically talking about with that was this whole transhumanistic movement, which, that hasn't really come fully into the mainstream yet, but will be. And, they were showing me like Neuralink and utilizing AI within the body. And I mean, honestly, like that's a different topic for like another day
Hmm.
because there's so much there. But this is just something to kind of put out there because we are going to see these types of technologies explode during
Mm.
this transit. And, you might feel really inclined to, oh, I'm going to use it for this, or oh, I could use it for this. And just from the front end, I'm going to encourage you again to really take some time and forethought
Yeah.
for that. We all came into this lifetime purposefully. Like we literally chose our bodies, we chose the things that we struggle with, we chose the accidents that we experience, like whatever the case may be. Everything is not only by purpose, but for our growth and benefit. And by kind of taking that away and replacing it with technology, we really are, in essence, changing our what we're here to be, which is human. Not robots, not, half and half. So, and
Right.
honestly, that could really lead to a very dark place within our history around AI technology. And so,
Mm.
and we've actually been there before, during Atlantean times, that was a huge aspect of it and part of what led to the downfall of Atlantis. Again, another topic for another time, but I just wanted to share that because it's very, very important for us to already be thinking about as we are
Yeah,
stepping into this transit.
absolutely.
Yeah. So politics, I wanted to cover this because of course, this is a political series and I wanted to know specifically like what's going to change through this transit in regards to politics. And it was great, honestly. Again, remember
Yeah.
we've got some difficulty to go through with this, but it says, you know, politics will be greatly affected and that it's going to require change and growth, right?
Hmm.
It's going to bring in so many more people who have a fair sense of justice to replace those within government who do not. It will also change up greatly the communication between governments. Diplomacy will transform. There will be much more action instead of so much talk. Instead of just like people will come to tables ready to do business, ready to get things done. And there will be less groveling about as there has been for so long. Which I dated a diplomat many years back when I lived in New York, and he would tell me about his meetings with other countries. I'm like, oh my gosh, do y'all like ever do anything? It just didn't
Right.
seem like they got a lot done.
Yeah.
Um, and they also share, so lawmakers will be changing in and of themselves, simply
Mm.
because they will be looking through a new lens, understanding that the entire world around them is changing, knowing um, they can't continue as things have been, but they can do something to be a part of that change. So we're going to see like a mass exit of people who don't truly serve the collective and better people stepping into place. And the Akasha said specifically, like with conservation in mind, technology at the forefront, thinking about solutions for all instead of for some. And again, this is a long transit. This is going to take time, but I was very much seeing that, these lawmakers who are currently in place, and we know a lot of who they are, and they are not here to serve our
Right.
collective, certainly not here to serve the United States. I can't speak for other countries, but whole point just being like I saw a lot of like hearings, a lot of constitutional change, a
Mm.
lot of things really getting rerouted for us. And what I have seen through the Akasha anyway, in regards to government within the United States, even outside of this, is um, I think that 2032 is when we'll have our first female president. And that is really going to usher in like a massive, massive time of change. I did not see that the US is ready for that yet with this next upcoming presidency, but I do see that for like 2032. And so, in the midst of leading up to that, part of why we'll actually be ready for that will be because of all of the changes that are going to be taking place within government through that time. Um, and I'm actually like, from what I have seen again, and this is, future timelines are always open to change. So I can only speak into the present moment. But what I have seen is like that the next president we do have come into office is going to really start righting the ship in regards to
Mm,
what the dumpster fire that we are
yeah.
currently living in.
It's so interesting because as you're, I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing that because as someone who, worries about the future, like that gives me so much hope. Like you said, woman president, and I was like, yes, that's so exciting. But it's interesting because I kept getting this sense of the scales being balanced. I keep pulling imagery for of scales. And I think exactly that's like, so sounds like exactly what you're saying. Like things are really off kilter now.
Yeah.
And it's like we have to go through almost through the fire, as it were, to get things to balance out. And I also love that while you were talking, I pulled the Emperor in reverse, which I think is quite fitting for what we're discussing here. So that felt good too to see that. But yeah, it definitely feels like we're on the cusp of something. I've had this feeling for a few weeks, like as the news cycle keeps coming in and, and we're hearing about all the things that are going on, I keep telling people around me we are on the cusp of something. We're on the cusp of change. And just really seeing it through this transit is going to be fascinating.
Yeah. Well, and change is happening, right? It's happening every day.
Literally.
It's just that we have so much that is um so much that is like we have so much negativity kind of at the forefront right now
Mm,
that it's difficult to actually see the changes that are taking place that are good.
exactly.
And I mean, and we've got some, I mean, the rest of this year, next year, they're going to be tough years, right? So
Right.
it's not like, ooh, we're going to wake up tomorrow and these
Right.
things are going to happen, but it's certainly helpful to me. Like I was sharing with you, like I won't get out of bed in the morning if I didn't have,
Yeah.
the Akashic perspective of what's going on because it's heavy. It's really heavy.
It is heavy. It is heavy. And I think too, we have to remember that these things that this transformation that we're going to go through as a society, we are changing things that are so deeply rooted.
Yeah.
And it has to be, it can't just be a surface level change. Like this is
No.
like you said, I think you used the words uprooting of how things are right now. And we have to be ready for that and be willing to go through it. And I think that's going to be the hard part for us as humans is like knowing that like this is part of the process. It has to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, like the very roots of the United States, but were founded on racism and
Yes.
colonization and all of that stuff. And so we have to literally burn everything to the ground and then rebuild.
Yep.
Like I've for years I've said we have to clear the chessboard on both sides. Like this is
Right.
across, the systems are what is sick. The systems are what enables, I think, some really good intentioned people to come into politics and then get,
Yes.
wrapped up in power and greed. And we're human,
Mhm.
we're very fallible in that way. And so if we don't change the systems, then we can't ever bring the right people in, like it's just it won't last. Um, One of the last things about the politics, which I thought was really interesting, is just that the Akashic Records talked about how the United States is really acting as an example to the world right now. And I just want to share that. Uh, As we have shared so many times, the United States is the solar plexus of the planet, which is why it has always been so influential. Even as you have seen the United States begin to topple and fall apart and be seen for more of what it truly is, yeah, we're definitely the bad guys. Understand that it is also acting as a lesson for other governments to ensure the same things do not happen. Therefore, many governments around the world will also be changing alongside the US in their own way, recreating their governments, the ways they go about doing things, constitutions, things of this nature, ensuring that they're beginning to lay a more solid foundation and not following in the footsteps of the United States. This was part of the contract of the United States was to act as this example on a world stage through its evolution.
Wow, that
Um,
tracks. That tracks.
I thought that was really interesting. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't think about the United States having its own soul contract, but of course it does. you know?
Right. Oh man. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Especially as we see how foreign governments are responding to our country right now,
yeah.
and our requests and our things. That makes so much sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how could they not, you know? I always I always try to learn through the through the pitfalls of my friends and family and people around me.
Yeah.
I think if we're actively trying to grow as a person, then hopefully we can use other people's mistakes to be like, oh,
Right.
hey, maybe I won't also do that thing. Or, like I know that, my parents in so many ways taught me how I don't want to be, right?
Right.
Which was very helpful to me. Um, so in the midst of like this whole transit, because it is again a massive transit, and the Akasha really talked about the most important, like it's so important for you to really step into a completely different place of self-care through this transit
Mm.
because everything is going to ramp up. Uranus is fast, Gemini is fast. I mean, like it's we are going to feel this. And they talked about how, like this is why somatics, nervous system, and these types of things have been coming up the last couple of years to prepare
Yeah.
us for this time. And so these are not like little BS gimmicky wellness things out there. Like this is real. And for people who aren't actively slowing down, bringing more space and capacity into their lives, working with their nervous system, really caring for our physical bodies, like, wow. I mean, mental disorders, diseases, like these things are going to go through the roof. And we'll see this a lot, unfortunately, in people who are, outside of ourselves, maybe at work, whatever the case may be, if they don't understand. I mean, this transit could honestly really make a lot of people go crazy, and a lot of
Mm.
people become violent, a lot of people become very intense, because again it's going to be shaking up their nervous system so much they're not going to be able to understand like right from wrong as clearly. It's going to have a powerful effect on the human body. And so again, we've been preparing for this like since
Yeah.
2020. We have been prepared every year, but like we need to take this very seriously.
Yeah. Oh, I love that message so much. And it makes so much sense when you look at the timeline of like just how many of us are leaning into this work and leaning into, like you said, the nervous system. I cannot get through a day without some kind of something that helps me regulate and hold my energy and like all of those things. And it's become really important for me to teach it to my children how to regulate and how to do these things. And I was, as you were speaking, I just kept thinking about how I'm seeing that more and more around me and in my circles. And there's a purpose to that. And that's amazing. I love it
Yeah.
when everything starts, it starts to connect and it starts to make sense to you. Like it just opens up a whole different world. So love that.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. Like, I mean, my morning time, I've really been stepping back into it the past 2 months, and it is it is a non-negotiable, I kind of forego going to the gym with my partner in the morning, which I love. We have so much of a blast when we go together. But he has to be at work at a specific time. And so it starts the day off rushing, and then I'm rushing all day, and I can't it's so
Yeah.
much better for me to work out at home or work out at my own pace, and so I'm having to sacrifice something I really love, but it ultimately is much better for me. And so that these are the things we're going to have to do moving forward. Um, and Yeah, we'll all be learning those lessons in one way or another. And just last thing here that I just want to share, because again, this is so important. We need to remember that we are the creators of this reality. And
Yes.
Uranus and Gemini, again, it's just going to bring so much up. So much is going to change. It's going to be rapid. It's going to be quick. We have to, like we were talking about, like stay focused on the good things. Stay
Right.
focused on the things we're thankful for so that we can build that future for ourselves versus, we underestimate how important it is for us to be seeing the beauty in the world, to be seeing the things that are changing for the best. We want to feed into that timeline, not the other one. Because
Yeah.
that one's actually it's going to change. Those folks are going to fade out, and we're going to be moving forward. And anyone who's tuning into this is a part of that moving forward. So
Yeah.
the sooner that we choose and decide together to make a better world, the faster we'll get there.
I love that. It's so true. I was just speaking with, I have a lot of family in Texas, and they had a local election that they were able to flip a seat. It's a really big deal. And it was just on the local level. It wasn't huge. It's not going to affect, you know, Congress or anything like that. But what it has affected so much is the hope and the energy in that area and in their city. And those are the small changes that I am seeing and looking at and looking for and leaning into. And so I would encourage everyone else to do the same. There are things happening in smaller ways and smaller spaces, and all of those small actions lead to bigger change. And so I think that, for me, it's so important to pay attention to what's going on around me. And not that I'm not paying attention to what's going on in the bigger scheme of things, but I pay attention less for my mental health. But by paying attention to what's going on in my world and my community, it's been incredible to see the energy and the change that is happening. And so I just would really encourage everyone to do the same. It has been such a game changer for me with my energy and how I accept, uh, like when I say accept, like pull, draw in, like when I'm looking at bigger stories, how they affect me and how they affect my energy. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the Akasha has been talking about for the past year, like the change is not going to come from the top. It literally will come from local
Yes.
governments first. So, it's starting that ripple that will eventually bleed out. And
Yeah, it's happening.
absolutely, we will celebrate every win that we get.
Yes, right. Absolutely.
Please, dear Lord, thank you. Okay, so let's transition into speaking
Yes.
about the war in Iran. Heavy
Yeah.
topic, big topic, a topic with no real end in sight. But first and foremost, for those who aren't aware, I did like a deep dive on this episode 303 on this war. And so and I this was more towards the beginning of when it first began. And so I wanted to really kind of dive back in and kind of see, okay, like where are we at almost a month later? How long is this going to last? Like just kind of what's going on around it so that we can kind of keep you updated as well. Because this war it's going to massively affect the United States. But yeah, Caroline, kick us
Yeah.
off, my dear.
I'm so excited to hear what you have to say about this. Because when I was doing this reading, I had to like ask a couple of times, like, are you sure? Are you sure? Like, is that really what I'm reading? So I pulled the Ace of Cups, the Empress reversed, Three of Wands, and Five of Pentacles. Why I did this many cards. So I was kind of doing an and or pull, which is where you pull two cards, and it's like either and or depending on what comes through. They kept telling me to pull. They told me to pull another one. They told me to pull another one. I thought that was very interesting. Um, what came through for me is that we are not going to be the answer, and I th we, as in the United States, to this ending. Um, Again, I'm so excited to hear what you have to say because I was like, "Are you sure?" It's going to come from somewhere else, and the Empress reverse really points to an unraveling of truth that has to happen before the resolution can come. I don't know what that unraveling is. It seemed to be something that was like in the shadows that we're not seeing. There's something beneath the surface that we, as citizens of the United States, have not seen. And they were telling me, my guides were telling me that that unraveling has to happen before we can have peace. I really think that the Ace of Cups was representing peace, an end to this conflict, but immediately that Three of Wands was laid on top. And the Three of Wands card is a man looking out into the distance, which immediately told me that whatever this resolution is, it's far away. It's not coming soon. I think that was hard to hear as someone who's like, can this just be over? Can we just be done? But I've got very much that this is not a quick ending. And there was a strength coming through, a strength from where I'm not sure if it didn't feel like it was coming from us again, but that timing is farther away. That Five of Pentacles for me was reading as messy. I was telling you that before I did an April reading for my Substack, and had pulled that one as well as coming forward as messy. And so that wasn't super fun to hear. It was like it's going to be really messy. It's going to be very messy. It's going to get worse before it gets better. The unraveling that needs to happen is not going to be easy, and it's not going to be quick, and it's not going to be clean. That was the message that came through for me.
Yeah.
Such a
No, that
downer.
completely tracks. That completely tracks. And even in the first big reading that I did, they said this is not going to be over quick. But they dove into it a lot more with this one. Um, yeah,
I think for
it's
me, I think for me as a human, I haven't been watching the news leading up to doing this reading. Like I literally have been unplugged for like a week and a half. And so I sat down to do the reading as like someone who's like, maybe they'll tell me something really good. Maybe I'll pull something really great. And I think it was incredibly disappointing to hear, which is why I had to like check my humanness to the spiritness of like everything that was coming through. Um, and so I think it's totally real. Like if you're listening and hearing that, like I never like to give kind of a Debbie Downer of a message, but I think that we're hearing this for a reason, and that unraveling piece, like I think is really, really important and something we need to pay attention to. So
yeah. Well, and it's gonna be leading into our third topic, right, which is the US economy.
yeah, well,
So what the Akashic Records shared, and they were very direct. They said, understand this war isn't going to disappear overnight. Um, in fact, as we mentioned from the very beginning, this is a war that will take some time simply because the beast has been woken,
mm,
as likes to be said, meaning that the United States, has awoken something that has been waiting for a very long time. Understand that Iran is not only prepared for this war, but fully prepared to pay the price to win this war. And they will indeed win it. Make no mistake about it. Um, and, they talked about how, of course, our government already has really begun like trying to spin it like, oh, they're in control. And, Trump's been talking about like peace talks and whatnot. Um, Similar to you, I am not someone who's like heavily inundated by news. I skim headlines at night on the BBC, but that's pretty much it. And I also look at Al Jazeera sometimes, but I can't stay plugged into all these things. So I don't know all the ins and outs of everything. Um, but and they said, we know this may sound extreme to say, But your current government is playing with a blindfold on, meaning that they can't see what they're
Mm,
doing. They're used to getting their way. And so everything is being decided from an emotional standpoint. There is no real strategy. Everything is being decided spur of the moment. When you have two such countries coming together in a war, one who is resolute, clear, and has been ready, is deeply strategized and very intentional about their moves, while the other is playing haphazardly, you can understand what's going to take place. And they did share, like what's unfortunate is the grave amount of lives that will be given up in this conflict on both sides. It's definitely going to really be costly in regards to lives. And the government, they even shared, like, of course, the U.S. government hasn't been honest about what's taking place. They're constantly trying to distract you, fill you with what they think you want to hear, make excuses for their actions, and look strong and courageous. While on the other side, they're completely freaking out because they're coming to an understanding that not only can they not win this war, but that they will have to make quite a few concessions to even stop it.
mm.
And so I'll pause there for a second. And it's just, I mean, like, I from the very beginning, to me, the way that, if you've, like, I've seen on threads a lot of the videos that Iran is making, like, holy crap, like the propaganda, if you will,
Right.
about the United States. Like, this stuff it's incredibly, like, it's brilliant. People are like, wait a minute, am I like supporting Iran? Like,
I know.
is this what's happening here?
You're like, that's a great video. Wait a minute.
Yeah. Because, everyone I know, like, none of us are interested in going to war with Iran, right? Like, we don't want this for the United States, not at all. And then when you look out at how clearly intentional they are being, and then you look
Hmm.
at our freaking government that is ran by these emotional little children,
Right.
what do we expect?
I know. And I think it's so interesting, like everything that you're saying, because I didn't scroll all the way down when I was going through my notes. One of the things my guide said is we cannot face peace. This is the wording. Face peace until we face the truth of why it started and the truth of the people involved.
Yeah.
And I think that is huge, when we're talking about the people who are controlling everything and holding all the reins. Like, until we as a society, as a collective say, hey, this is not okay. We're not going to be okay with this. Like,
Yeah.
I hesitate to say this, but sometimes it feels like that overhaul of like Congress that needs to happen. Like, sometimes it feels like it's going to have to happen before this is over because there's nobody checking what's going on here.
Yeah.
And yeah,
On both sides, you know?
literally. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Nobody's being, and that's the whole thing. The United States has gone to war so many times, and people like, um, the political pundits and whatnot are wanting to have discussions about this. And it's like, we've never gone to war before with no strategy, with no clear oversight,
Right.
with no strategy. Like, we literally have children running the government who are making emotional decisions about what to do next. And that's very scary, especially when you're
Right.
talking about a country like Iran, who, again, like, I saw very clearly, like, they have been waiting decades for this,
Oh, yeah,
you
this is
know?
like a dream come true for them. This is what they've
Absolutely.
been wanting. And I think the thing that worries me and as I'm looking into this is, what they're willing to do versus what we're willing to do. I think should be something that we all kind of pay attention to. You know, um, I think, yeah, it's really interesting you brought up the videos because I'm like thinking to myself, did they have these already ready? Like, were they? I think about
I
that
don't think
Lego
so,
video
but
and that Lego video specifically was so genius.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that they will be willing to do a lot more to win this.
The good news that I think that the good, what I have seen anyway, and again, this is, when I did the first reading, I saw very clearly like Iran as a nation, like they just wanted to be left the hell alone to do what they want to do. They're not
Right.
interested in outside interference. And it's like, the big older brother coming along and like picking on the young brother and being like, you need to, the United States, like imperialism, like, oh, let's stick our nose in everyone's business and like tell
Right.
you how to handle your shit. And we can't even handle ours. It's so obnoxious, right?
So true.
And like it's something I've been embarrassed about since I was a kid when it comes to like what the American government does. But the thing is that Iran really understands that this is not the American public, that this is government. And so the good news is that, I mean, they are absolutely like willing to take action, but the action that I have seen being taken place is going to be more on like things like our infrastructure, that canal being closed, which the Akasha talked about. That's going to cause us an enormous amount of pain. Like they're not really interested in coming over here and dropping big bombs, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And so honestly, I think in regards from like what they're willing to do versus the US is again much more emotional, much more apt to make extremely foolish decisions that could affect so many more than what Iran will do, simply because they are really being strategic about what they're doing. Because at the same time, like you have to understand, right? Like Iran's a smaller country, and
Right.
they do like they have partners and they have people, other countries that they don't want to cross too much of a line with. And so like they do have to kind of play within certain guidelines because of who the United States is, right? So but
Mm.
they're going to come right up against that line for sure. We
Yeah.
will see, I think, smaller events happening potentially, but I haven't personally seen like, huge events happening within the
Right.
US from Iran.
It's really interesting because I'll share a little personal story. Well, how does Caroline have a personal story about Iran? Well, let me tell you, my husband got a brand new job and he has been waiting to start this job. He was waiting for like the official offer. It took weeks, weeks, weeks. Come to find out, Iran had hacked and wiped clean a lot of their systems. My
Mm,
husband works in the medical industry, and I believe
yeah.
they had his company had recently acquired a company in Israel. I am not 100% on that, so do not quote me. But I just thought that was so fascinating because I think a lot of times these things can seem so far from us. It can be really easy to just like turn this off and be like, well, that's happening over there. It's not affecting me. And it was one of those moments where it was like literally staring you in the face. Like
Yeah.
the reason why he hadn't received his offer was because they literally had no technology to type something up to send it to him,
Yeah.
which is fascinating. And they're all over the world. So I think, like you said, I think we're going to be seeing a lot of those smaller actions like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to cause a mess. I mean, they talked about everything. It's going to affect a lot of things in the United States, everything from the arrival of medicines, gas, food, so much more.
Right.
Um, that the United States will go through a period of lack because of it. Um, they said, that it's having a much greater effect on kind of across the globe than we even really understand right now, right? um, they said, simply because again, when the United States takes action, so too do other countries then feel emboldened to take their own action, right? Like I've just been thinking about, even before I did this reading, it was like, oh my gosh, like the United States, supposedly the biggest world power, whatever, biggest military, is just like, Venezuela and then Iran. And like, they're talking about like, and they're just doing this again with no oversight
Oh, yeah,
whatsoever.
right.
And how are other, how can other governments not be kind of feeling emboldened? Like, okay, well, if the US
Right.
can do this, then we can do this, right?
Yeah.
Um, and they said other governments are now putting an enormous amount of pressure on the United States government to shut things down. But they're finding themselves within a rock and a hard place, as they say, because, you know, and they said, uh, you know, our president is not going to capitulate in the ways that Iran wants right now. Um, and and of course they really dove into like, if you're getting your news from large American media sources right now, understand you're not being told the truth,
Mm,
period. Like it's so important. And they talked about how like one of the things that are going to be changing in the midst of that will come from this, this war, like the outcome is that the American news media is going to go through a big transformation itself. Because people are just going to straight up, like, they're going to be learning in this process. Like, they can't be dependent upon. But they're just saying, like, look to outside news organizations who are able to speak freely about what's taking place, even if there is a bent to their story. And obviously, following independent journalists more.
mm.
Um, and they just reminded us, like, they said, and it can be difficult. We know that okay. Nonetheless, we do not want you to fear, but understand that everything that is happening must take place. We know we've told you that so many times it can be difficult to not get lost in fear. We understand this, but we want to assure you that nothing lasts forever. Um, and this is taking place so the American people can be woken up to a place where they require action and change within the United States. Unfortunately, this will only come through pain, as the United States has consistently chosen to look in the other direction, especially when what is taking place isn't affecting so many of you. Um,
It really goes
but
back to what we talked about before about the transit
yeah,
and that time of change and how like we have to go through this.
yeah. Well, and the Akasha said, like, just like you were talking about, like, this is not and they said, but this is going to lessen as you move forward because people are going to be talking, families will be affected. It's just like everybody's going to be affected right now, kind of moving forward. Like it's going to be hitting different populations here and there in different ways, whether it is like your husband's new workplace or
Right.
someone's cousin or and again, this is just, I was just learning in therapy on Monday, my partner and I, she was, talking to us about change, right? And change only comes through love or pain.
Mm,
And think
hmm.
about us here within the United States. Like, even when I was in high school, I would talk about how, like, yeah, Americans love to complain about politics at their kitchen table, but they don't go out to do anything about it,
Right,
you
right.
know?
Yeah,
And
it's
so,
always has seemed this thing that's separate from us. And like we are being required to step up to the plate. Like
yeah,
we are being required to decide where we're going to land in all of this. And I think that is a struggle for a lot of people is like, I mentioned in my April forecast, like we are going to have to take up the sword where others are not willing to.
yeah,
And I really do think that is like what we're being called upon in this moment.
absolutely.
Small action, like I said, small action leads to big change. And I think that we can't just only keep it confined to the kitchen table anymore.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the only way that you can create lasting change, right? Is with
Right.
small actions. No, like very rarely can you just wake up in the morning and you're like, okay, I'm done with that fully and completely. Like there's always a part of us that wants to go back to what we're
Right.
used to,
What's
but
comfortable.
we are going to become so uncomfortable that we will. Which leads us into our third topic, which is about the US economy. And I would love to hear what came through for you. This honestly was like my favorite part of like the channeling that I did. Um, but how
I,
about you go for it
yeah,
first?
I felt like mine was really philosophical. Like I pulled these beautiful cards. Like one of them, so I pulled the Page of Pentacles reversed. I pulled the Ace of Pentacles and then the Star. I rarely get to see the star card. Like it just doesn't come forward for me very often. And so when I pulled that, I was like, "Ooh, pretty." And then I was like, "Wait a minute." Um, so what came forward for me, and I personally have been feeling this for a while. Like if you ever have a conversation with me about money and, society change, I will talk about this. And so, but I just thought it was so fascinating. What we have come to know as luxury and prosperity, because that's what, some of the meaning of these cards is getting turned on its head. The star is such a beautiful card, but if you look closer, you see that the woman is literally pouring water out everywhere. It's some over here, some over there. The abundance that she has, she's pouring it out. Wish I could find it in my deck. And that is what was coming forward for me, is like we have just been pouring out money everywhere, and it's really going to come back and bite us in a big way. And I think you kind of alluded to that a little bit in our conversation about Iran. Um, I was told specifically where to place these in order. So my guides told me place the star between the Page of Pentacles and the Ace of Pentacles, losing it all, pouring it out everywhere, and then finally finding peace. Um, there was I think an interesting note to make. I saw a map the other day. It keeps coming back to me, this image of this map, and it was showing how the boats go through the Strait of Hormuz and where they go first. And I don't think Americans realize this, but we get the boats last. And if that is not a metaphor for what I feel like the time period that we are going to be entering in our economy, then I don't know what is.
Mm,
We are going to get the boats last.
yeah, that honestly perfectly aligns. Hmm. Yeah, the Akasha, I mean, I'll just dive in because like here again, the Akasha was really direct. Um, because I'd asked what's most important for us to know about the US economy moving forward. And they said, well, it's going to go through some very hard times. Things will crack, shake, even some of the systems will fall apart because they must. Um, understand that your banking system, so much of the ways in which money moves behind the scenes within your economy is not only corrupt, but is actively working to minimize your life, to make things more difficult, to make you sicker, more needy, more desperate
Hmm.
without. Um, and of course, there are people behind the scenes who are pulling these strings. So, um, the economy moving forward and into this year is going to experience fractures. Food prices are going to go through the roof, gasoline prices through the roof. It will be difficult to get water at times. It will be difficult for you to live your normal life simply because there will be so much restraint on money and its movement. The job market will greatly suffer as AI is coming to the forefront, taking over so much. But so too are those at the top level just discovering how to do business in a cheaper, more effective way, thereby cutting out the workforce, right? And this is where they really kind of
Mm.
spoke about this. America has always been a working nation, and that is changing. You are in the beginning stages of this shift, and it's going to take time, but understand that the hits on the economy aren't going to be that devastating. You will simply need to plan according to what is taking place and be more mindful about your spending, get rid of things that no longer serve. But for American society, that is actually very good for you. And kind of similarly, like they talked about the excess of American society,
Right.
and when I went to Costa Rica, it was like my first time I left the United States. I was going for like an ESL program, and I lived with a local family for a little while, and they had three kids, and like these kids are like perfectly content to play with nuts and bolts. And it was like rainy monsoon season, and the entire family was sharing one umbrella. And I had all my computers and cell phones and shit, and
Yeah.
the first week I was there, I went through this whole existential, like, oh my gosh, we are so excessive thing before realizing, like, it's okay, Anna. You grew up in this. This is normal to you, and you can make different
Yeah.
decisions.
Right.
And when I lived in Vietnam, I was there for a year. I lived out of one suitcase. And, for a girl, that's like a big deal. But I had plenty. I definitely needed to go shopping after that year. But my point is being like, it showed me how little I actually need. I was
Hmm.
so creative with what I had. Um,
And I really think that's the message here. Again, forgot to scroll all the way, but I was told that we need a new definition of what is prosperous. We need to redefine the American dream as a society, or we're not going to make it to said prosperity. And I really think that is like part of this change that we are going to go through is like a redefinition of who we are.
Yeah.
And I think this is a huge part of it. I also love that you talked about water. I found my star card so I could show it to the video viewers, but I mean, just pouring the water out. And, I live in Colorado. They're talking about us not having enough water this year because we didn't have enough snow. And like when you start to think about that, it becomes, very visceral. Like, oh my gosh, I may not be able to fill my above ground pool this summer. And then you're like, okay, but do I need the pool? So I think those are the kinds of questions I think that we're going to have to be asking of ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. The Akasha, I honestly loved that they said, you may believe that you need all the things, but in actuality, living with all the things, having easy access to all the things, has only caused more discontent within your society, more mental disorders, health problems, and so much more. You eat way more than you need to, you buy more than you need. The excess of American society is known worldwide. Therefore,
Hmm.
having to pull back and tighten your belt, as they say, will do you good in the long run. It will help you to be more mindful about why and how you spend your resources. It will lead you back to more whole foods, better eating, better nutrition. You will become healthier in the process, just like everything, like,
Yeah,
and you think about, like, I mean, going to the grocery store, if you're trying to buy like a cereal, there's so many freaking brands. Like, it's overwhelming to the system to like have to make that choice.
right.
And so if we only
Yeah,
have five, it's honestly like, I mean, there's all kinds of research about how kids, they get overwhelmed if they have too many toys. They just don't know want to play with anything because they don't know what
right.
to choose.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is so interesting for me personally because for years I have been like talking about the excess, especially in the food industry. And, we have our food system here is a hot mess. I don't know if anybody's aware of this. My daughter has mast cell activation syndrome. She has food triggers. I've recently been diagnosed with like a digestive issue. And it's been interesting because when it was just my daughter, we would like eat around her. And now as a family, because there's two of us now, we've really tightened back on what we eat. And it's kind of been incredible to watch the transformation
Yeah.
of my family. And so I would just encourage everyone, like if you're hearing this and you're like, I have to pull back, oh my gosh, lean into the good and the transformation that it will bring you. Um, I think I think it's so fascinating having this conversation and thinking about the last few weeks of my own life. We've gotten rid of all the Alexas in our house and we've been cleaning out rooms and it's almost like we're preparing. It's like the change is already happening and I can sense the transformation. So I've already been taking steps and I think it's going to be as heavy as it felt when I was doing the reading. And as heavy as the topics were and trying to read for something this big, I think that there was also a lightness at the end of each reading I did.
Yeah.
And that would be like the thing I want everybody to hear is like, again, we have to go through the fire to get to the peace.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, the Akasha said, understand that the pain you will feel through this period will actually greatly improve American society overall. For if you travel around the world, then you will see people living in much smaller homes with far less things, eating way less, spending much less, and being much happier. You do not need all that you have, and this will be a time of learning this lesson. Um, and the one, the major caveat here, because of course the Akasha talked about like, with your spending, like, it's like just walking into Target and spending $100. Like this is no longer a
Right.
thing. Um, but to continue investing in yourself, like this
Mm,
is huge. Like never hesitate to worry about investing in yourself. And they talked about if you've been wanting to start a business, if you've been wanting to invest in a health program, if you've been wanting to work with someone, like do not hesitate in those areas because that's very needed and that will always come back to you, you know? Um, and then lastly, they just reminded us, right, that our mindset is everything, you know,
Mm.
and you know this, Caroline, as an
Yeah,
entrepreneur, right? Like if you
absolutely.
believe that you have not, then you have not. If you believe you
Right.
have infinite, you have infinite. Whatever you believe is what is. So in the midst of this, check your mindset, you know, really keep that at the forefront, you know, and the Akasha really encouraged us to live with an abundant mindset. You know, they talked about like you're always going to have what you need. And this, of course, like part of what the beauty that's going to come through this is it's going to create more community, more people coming together, helping each other
Yes.
out, you know. And so very much like you, by the end of it, I was honestly almost like, okay, let's do it. You
Yeah.
know, like
Yeah, let's
we've
go.
got this.
I mean, it's one of those things where it feels so hard and like having like let me tell you, having children right now with everything that's going on, having girls with everything that's going on in the world. And especially like looking at I have a 15-year-old. So like we're talking about college and like sending her out of the house. You know, there are some real fears that pop up, but whenever I stop to breathe and lean into whatever the energy is, it's never bad. And I think that has given me so much hope. And again, seeing those micro changes, you know, as we're talking, it's, you know, you're saying it's going to be important for us to come together as community, as society. Can I tell you how much I am seeing that in my city? In my little pockets, there's these little communities forming, these little groups, and they're beautiful. And the energy that we put out into the world as a collective, it makes change in and of itself. And so if we can put ourselves in those spaces, you know, I just think that again, I think that's why so many of us are being called to this work right now. Because like you said, with that abundance mindset, like if we were all doing it, holy moly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and honestly, like at the very beginning of this message, the Akasha said very directly, like, um, America can turn this around like
Mm,
immediately if it was, you know, if a large enough number of us got together and chose for it to. But unfortunately, you know, we don't have as many people awakened, even though like in our world it seems like so
yeah,
many
yeah,
are.
so
Um,
many.
but I love that you shared that perspective because I can only imagine what it's like to be a parent through these times. I mean, I have my little
It's
kitty
insane.
and that's it, you know, like, but if I had kids, wow. So thank you for sharing that. I think that that's really
Yeah.
speaking into a lot of people who are listening for sure, you know, and whether your kids are like small or even grown, I'm sure that like parents are worried, you know, like I would be.
There's this really great quote that floats around the internet, and it was like, why? It was something about raising children to be like slayers, to be knights in a time of dragons. And that's really how, you know, we've approached it. We're giving them all the tools. We've created some really strong, opinionated young women, which, you know, is really great when they're out of the house, a little harder when they're in the house. But they give me hope because they have been taught to call out injustice when they see it. They have been taught to stand up for what they believe in. And I do think that we have a younger generation rising up that is going to amplify the work that people our age are trying to do. So I do have hope. I do lean into hope in this. I think it's easy to despair, but when I see them and I see the choices they're making, it gives me so much hope.
Yeah. Well, they are so blessed to have you. I would have loved to grow up with you as a mom, Caroline. I think
Me
you're
too.
amazing.
Thank you.
All right, folks. So just to kind of wrap things up here, Caroline, I'd love for you to kind of share where, you know, people can come and find you and hang out. And of course, I will be getting a link to make it nice and easy for people to just kind of click into the show notes. But go ahead and share with us like what you've got, whatever you
Yeah.
want. Again, I
Yeah,
know you're doing so
absolutely.
much.
Yeah, it feels that way. So I hang out on Instagram occasionally. You can follow me at Caroline the Voice Keeper. And then of course everything is on my website, carolinehole.com. I have, a Substack where I write about topics. And what I write a lot about is women in this time period, women of a certain age. I definitely am speaking to myself in midlife who are trying to reclaim themselves and reclaim their voice in this time where we feel like we can't. And my big news, the thing that I've been working on is I self-published a book, Let Her Return, for the woman who feels off quiet or no longer at home in her life. And
Yay.
if you just go to my website, carolinehole.com/book, the link will be there. And I think this is a really great place to start if you're like going, okay, I don't feel quite like me. How do I find her again? Start there.
And you have an incredible story. So I can only imagine what it's like reading through it. Cause I mean, I only know like a little bit of that shift that took place for you. So
Yeah, it was definitely an exercise in reflection and like so many things, writing it down and putting it into, the framework that I work with people on. And yeah, I'm so privileged that I'm able to share my story and just hope that it helps others.
yeah, I love that. Beautiful. Well, folks, I have two offerings this month. You can come hang out with me on the 21st. I'm teaching Access the Akashic Records, my level 1 workshop that I used to teach all the time. This is a beautiful 3-hour workshop. If you have been enjoying me talking about the Akashic Records, know that you can do this too. And I would love to have you come join. You'll not only learn all about the Akashic Records, how you can utilize it in your life, but also we'll be diving into the Akasha as a group on a personal level. So you'll get to experience the Akashic Records that night. In addition, on the 28th, I am hosting an Akashic guidance circle. So if you are in need of assistance or guidance in your life, this is a really beautiful opportunity, very affordable to come and get a reading. It's limited, only 6 people to a circle, specifically so that we can get everybody's questions answered. But these circles are always such an incredible time. So if that resonates with you, links will be in the show notes and also to meet Caroline. Caroline, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. You've been so much
Yeah.
fun to have on this show. I'm just so grateful that that you were able to come and be a part and share. I loved like your insights, and it was fun for me to like really get a chance to see your beautiful
Oh,
craft in action. So
thank you
thank you.
so much for having me. This was so fun and it was such a good exercise for me. Like I feel like it pushed me a little bit and pushed my guides as well. They were like, "Oh, well, usually we just talk about what's going on in your life." So I really appreciate you asking me. This was so much fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, folks, thank you so much for being here. Sending you lots of love. Be sure to share this with someone who could benefit from it. Leave rating review on iTunes, Spotify. Sending you so much love. And don't forget, when we invest in ourselves, the world benefits. Until next time.